The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus took Peter, John, and James and went up the mountain to pray. While he was praying, his face changed in appearance, and his clothing became dazzling white. And behold, two men were conversing with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his exodus that he was going to accomplish in Jerusalem. Peter and his companions had been overcome by sleep, but becoming fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As they were about to part from him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah." But he did not know what he was saying. While he was still speaking, a cloud came and cast a shadow over them, and they became frightened when they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my chosen Son. Listen to him." After the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. They fell silent and did not at that time tell anyone what they had seen. The Gospel of the Lord. I don't think Peter had much sense about mountain climbing, at least not in the Rocky Mountains, because no one in the Rocky Mountains would decide to pitch 3 tents on the top of a mountain and spend the night because of lightning, right? And storms like this great cloud coming through. And Jesus is like, no, that's not a good idea. Listen. This passage is just filled with mystery, isn't it? The mystery of how Jesus is changed in appearance. The Greek word that's used here in the New Testament is metamorphosed, from which we get the word metamorphosis, right? That means beyond the form. Meta is beyond, and morphos is form. So something about his form went beyond. It went beyond the form, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, right? It completely changes, and yet there's something similar about it. There's a constancy, a consistency. It's Jesus, but he's changed. And notice that it happens while he's praying. Okay, so most theologians say that it was his divine glory, his divinity that was shining through. It was being exposed, like the curtain was torn back, and we saw who he really is. He's not just a human being on the mountaintop praying, but he's God in the flesh. And so we get a sneak preview of this. And, most of his ministry, it was rather cloaked. People didn't realize he was God, until, of course, he rose from the dead. That's how he snuck in and conquered sin and death. As Father Ricardo talks about the ambush predator sneaking in under cover, and then destroying sin and death from the inside. So this is a mystery. How could Jesus be God and man? It's just beyond our comprehension. And these disciples, they're sleeping through it, and then they wake up, and they're rather dazed about it, and they see this. They don't quite understand either. And then the voice of the Father comes from this mysterious cloud that can't be controlled in any way. Right? The voice of the Father, this is my chosen Son, listen to him. The voice is speaking to them, to Peter, James, and John, encouraging them to listen to him, that he's the beloved Son of God, the chosen one of God. And that's a mystery as well, right? And that leads to, our whole contemplation of God as Trinity. Somehow he's Father and Son and Spirit, and we can't understand that either. It's really hard for our brains to wrap around this. So we have to leave room in our religion for some mystery. It's not all black and white, perfectly understandable. The mystery of how Christ becomes present in the Eucharist. We can't really explain it, but we experience it, like these apostles experienced his presence on the mountaintop. And they were challenged to follow him, to listen to him. And even that's a hard thing to do, right? Peter, James, and John, they could hear him speak audibly, and you could say, okay, let's go down the mountain. We're going to Jerusalem. They could hear him directly speaking. For us, it's a little bit more challenging, right? We can read the gospel, and we can hear his words. We can also hear him in our times of prayer, right? And even through the encouragement of other people and spiritual direction and that sort of thing. But it's hard. It's mysterious. So we have to kind of surrender to this mystery and just trust our God. Perhaps the biggest mystery, I think, in our readings today is what Paul says in Philippians. So he's reflecting on Jesus' glorified body, and he says, Jesus will change our lowly body to conform with his glorified body, to conform with his glorified body, by the power that enables him to bring all things into subjection to himself. So he's God, so he can bring all things into subjection to himself, and his plan is to change our lowly bodies to conform with his glorified body. That's a mystery. How do we understand that one? For centuries, the Christian tradition has buried the dead, like in a coffin in the ground, facing up, as Paul says in other passages, because we've fallen asleep in Christ, and we will wake up. And in the end, he will raise us up on the last day, and our souls will be reunited with our bodies. That's the Orthodox Christian belief, and that's hard to understand. That's hard to believe. A lot of people these days struggle with that, but that's really the reason why the church says, let's keep the mortal remains together after death, and not just be scattering them from airplanes or throwing them in rivers and that sort of thing. Keep the mortal remains there out of respect for this teaching that God is going to change our lowly body to conform with his glorified body. And that's good news. We're not going to be invisible spirits floating around for all of eternity in heaven, not being able to see each other. We're going to have some kind of glorified body. And all the scriptural references refer to eating and drinking and singing and worshiping, and so that's a part of the mystery of our faith too. We just have to trust our God, trust in his plan. He's on his way to Jerusalem. He's going to suffer, die, and rise, and he wants us to follow him through all of that. So we journey through Lent, dying to self, trusting him, surrendering to his will, and asking him to raise us up and one day eventually conform us with his glorified body. Archbishop Aquila is asking us to pray a novena starting this Thursday for the next 9 days after that, to pray for the Archdiocese as we go through this discernment phase, listening to all the reactions from all the parishes, and they're preparing for the synod. We really want to be listening to the way the Spirit is leading us. And so I just thought I would mention that because we printed up the novena. It's in the back. It was sent in Papa Bear's blurb, and we're going to have more hard copies of it because the Archbishop sent some, but they didn't get here in time, typical for Steamboat. But we should have them there in the next couple of days. But I just wanted to end my homily by reading day 1 of the novena to give us a sense of, we just have to, the Lord is calling us to trust him, and that means surrender. And when we surrender to his will, we have peace. And so here's day 1 of the novena. It's very short. Each one just has a short meditation. And the guy who wrote it is a priest, an Italian priest, and he was inspired to write this from the perspective of Jesus. So imagine Jesus speaking to you. Why do you confuse yourselves by worrying? Leave the care of your affairs to me, and everything will be peaceful. I say to you in truth that every act of true, blind, complete surrender to me produces the effect that you desire and resolves all difficult situations. And then he invites us after each of these short meditations to pray this one short line 10 times, like the 10 beads in a decade of a rosary. So I'm just going to say this and let us sink into this, and this will conclude the homily. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Oh Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything.